welcome to the premiere of Hocus Focus, mystical topics for spiritual explorers. I'm your host, Megan Rounds, and welcome to the show. Today's guest is a retired software engineer who resides in Lake Oswego, Oregon, with his wife of 42 years, Mary Ann. He and Mary Ann have a cat, a dog, 3 adult children, and 4 fabulous grandkids. I met him along with his wife and one of his daughters at a retreat that was hosted by the Lightworkers Lab, of which we're all members. You'll hear me talk about the Lightworkers Lab because it's an integral part of my life. There's absolutely no need to join unless you want to, but you're encouraged to join because it's an awesome group. But I'm happy to have you a part of this group, so I'm still going to mention the Lightworkers Lab here and there, though. Today's guest has been a guest on Megan's Mystical Mashup, a bi-weekly program that I host in the Lightworkers Lab and that I just mentioned will soon be offered here in Mystical Mashup in this Facebook group as well. And he's been a guest 1.5 times now, once on his own, and then once with his wife while they were vacationing in Hawaii. That was a pretty cool one too. In both of our previous conversations, we touched upon parallel timelines. So it seemed natural to invite him on this program to delve deeper into this fascinating topic. It's a fascinating topic to me, at least, one of my favorite things to talk about. His main gift is channeling energy, and many of us lovingly refer to him as the energy wizard. When I asked him his sign, he responded, peace. But then on further investigation, I learned he's a Scorpio with an Aquarius moon. Interesting fact, which I hope to talk with him further about in another Hocus Focus, is that he's visited the 1st, 4th, 5th, and 7th Earth chakras. That's a really fascinating topic too. Please give a warm welcome to energy wizard Mark Vollbrecht.
Hi.
Hi, Mark. Welcome. Oh, there's one thing I forgot to mention about your details that I think that I want to bring forth before we start talking, and that is that anybody who books you for energy healing or other services, you donate that, right?
Yes.
Yes. And is that to a variety of charities or to one in particular?
I wait till I accumulate some amount, and then if something pops up, then I donate it to whatever.
Excellent. Well, I think that's really worth saying. It's a worthy cause, I'm sure, whatever it happens to be, and it's really nice that you do that. So thank you.
Yeah. And then you might also mention that I do my energy healing on a donation basis.
Oh,
so there's not a set fee for
it. Thank you. And I'm just writing that down because I want to make sure I include that elsewhere. But I can say from firsthand experience, at least in watching your shows, well, you've sent me energy directly as well, and it's amazing. It's just amazing. So I highly encourage you to check out Mark and his energy services and other things. I think he's delving into readings. Those are pretty awesome too. So, all right. Well, thank you for being here for the premiere of this program. I'm really excited that you were game for playing.
Yeah.
And so we talked a little bit before about what our topic would be, and we've chosen parallel timelines. Now, do you want to give a little background on what we talked about before, or I can like fill in?
Well, when you say
what
talked
do you
about
remember?
before.
Well, we touched upon this. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you finish what you're saying first.
I was just going to say we touched upon this in our past conversations. I think both the one with Mary Ann present as well as the one that you and I did individually. And I think that was fresh from the Bliss Retreat, where some things around parallel timelines came up and some interesting experiences around that. And I'm happy to share those, but I wanted to hear what you had in mind.
Yeah,
too.
I think that's pretty much where I was going to start, was going through a little bit of that, and then kind of a train of thought that I had afterwards. And basically, at the Bliss Retreat, we had the one, well, I guess class, seminar, or session that was talking about timelines, about being able to go back and through meditation, go back and be able to, I guess, talk to your younger self and be able to shift what took place at that time in order to change what you have going on now,
Yes.
type of thing.
Yeah. And I look at it as, I don't know if they mentioned it this way specifically, but basically rewriting our timeline. So something, like you had said, something that happened in the past that affects us now, we can go back and actually do a do-over in a way, you know, say, okay, well, this is really what happened, and kind of change the whole trajectory of the future that results in the present.
Yeah.
Which is where my brain starts going, woo, this is fun.
Yeah.
Love that feeling.
Okay, so shortly after that, you posted somewhere that you had shifted timelines, or at least felt that you had.
Yeah.
And so, and that's where my thinking started going. It's like, okay, so if you shifted timelines, then you're from another timeline. So you're not the Megan that I was with at the Bliss Retreat.
Right. I'm a slightly different version. I'd like to say improved.
Yeah, well, but that's like, okay. So I'm going, what happened to the Megan Rounds that I knew? Did she go to a different timeline?
And I would say, yeah.
Well, and so then, but then the question is which timeline did she go to? Did she go back to the one that you came from, or did she go to a different one? Because in theory, there's, hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of timelines.
Yeah.
So did it become like a round robin where you came here and the one here went over? You came from timeline 1 to timeline 5. The 1 to 5 went to 10. 1 to 10 went to 24. To 1 to 28 to 16.
Yet we're never in the same place at once. Right?
Yeah. So.
Well, and I think I love thinking about it that way, because think of the complexity involved with that. It's like, if we're never really supposed to be in the same place, if there are multiple versions of us running around in a full spectrum of potential timelines, okay, so I know that there are some movies and things that play with this topic of never being you're not supposed to see yourself, like Harry Potter. I think there's one where they're not supposed to see each other, but the ones going back in the timeline see the ones in the original timeline. It's just the ones in the original one don't see the ones who are going back. And I think in one of the Star Treks, Spock meets Spock, where he said it was self-serving to say live well and prosper, or live long and prosper, because he was talking to his younger self. But nobody imploded. But there's a huge amount of complexity involved with that. Can I just mention I remember what that thing was that I posted about? Because I think one of the things we talked about was the Berenstein Bears and a different spelling of that title. That some people remember it spelled one way, and then others remember it another. And other people talked about the Nelson Mandela effect, where some people remember him dying in prison, and then other people remember him being released from prison and going on to lead South Africa and all of that stuff. I remembered, I was reading in one of my mashups, it was a birthday of, I think, Tommy Lee Jones, and then I put RIP, and someone's like, what do you mean? He's still alive. And I'm like, what? And both my husband and I remember him passing away. We remember all of the announcements around it and everything else. And so I'm like, what? And then I went back and I looked, and it's like, yeah, he's still alive. And I'm like, cool, I jumped a timeline. I really do enjoy those types of moments.
Yeah. Okay. So to continue my thinking on this, so Megan's jumping around all these different timelines. What about her higher self? Does her higher self jump timelines with her? In which case you have infinite yous and infinite higher selves for all these different timelines. But the answer to that, of course, is no, because your higher self is outside of time. I guess, for lack of a better way of putting it. I mean, time is something that we in the 3D have put in place, so to speak. So the question then is if you have infinite yous out there, basically, from all these timelines, but one higher self, keeping in contact with all of those infinite yous,
Right.
Just, yeah.
Well, and it's connecting to something I recently listened to. It's a podcast from, I think, a Sounds True podcast. I'll have to find it and post it here. But
Yeah.
it is Eckhart Tolle talking about a horizontal self and a vertical self. And he makes that reference with regards to the cross, which is a totally different way than I ever thought of cross as a symbol.
Yeah.
And the vertical self is a part of being, and it's our connection to our higher self. And the vertical self is our doing, right? And so in a parallel timeline aspect, we could be, there could be many, many versions of us all connected through that one vertical being piece, but like a tree. Like, I don't want to take away your thunder, but like a tree, or like a, like a dandelion maybe. And I was just listening to that this morning without the time reference, but the time piece, I just see this visual of everyone holding hands, except they're all me, all being guided by that higher self.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So
Did I
my
derail
next
that?
that's okay.
Okay.
So, of course, I got a little no, so I got to thinking a little bit more, kind of jumped to one side, go, okay. So I started thinking in terms of a tree, or in particular a tree of life, where you right now is the trunk of the tree, and all the roots are the various timelines that you could have traveled in order to get to where you are now.
I love that.
So there's multiple, and then going up the tree, you have all the branches going out, and those are all the timelines that you can follow in front of you.
So the roots are the ones we've had, we've already experienced, and the branches are the ones yet to come.
Yet to come, yeah.
Okay.
That you can you hit a branch there, and it's like, which way do I go? And you can go one way or the other. And so in essence, there's only ever actually one you.
Yeah.
See, and I like that idea. And so when you're jumping timelines, basically what you're saying, no, instead of my following this route up to where I'm at now on the trunk, I'm going to jump over, and I'll follow this other route up to where I am now.
And so when you say there's only one us, do you mean then in terms of consciousness?
Well, define consciousness. Are you saying in terms of what we have in the 3D?
Well,
or are you thinking of the higher consciousness?
I'm thinking in terms of the three-dimensional consciousness that makes us aware of ourselves in this three-dimensional realm. So I'm talking three-dimensionally right now, I think, in terms of, so like if I jump a time into another timeline, I'm still consciously me.
Yes.
Megan of today, even if I've changed and don't know it.
Yeah.
Ooh, so there's different consciousness. Yeah.
So in that terms, yes, it's just a single one, because I came up with a KISS principle for spirit, and it's keep it. What is it again? Oh, keep it spectacularly simple.
Ooh, okay. Easy for you to say.
Yeah. So it's like, you don't need to have dozens of you running around. You just need the current one that you are now.
And
for growing, and it's, you change which route you came up from, and you change which branch you're going out to from where you are now, but there's only ever just one of you.
Ooh. And
keep it simple.
So do you then think that at some point, going back to that early one where there's maybe multiple versions of us, do those multiple versions have different I mean, you're just saying that there's only ever one in
That
existence
one
at any one time.
at any time. Yeah, you have to remember that we in the 3D and our egos like to make things difficult.
I am really very aware of that. Thank you.
So,
Yes.
so
Yep.
it's like,
Oh, man.
okay, so it's like, you hear people talk about multiple dimensions or multiple universes. Like every time you make a decision, it splits into two, and the next one it splits in another two. So that there's like infinite number of universes we could be in.
Right.
Well, that of course is just a theory. And I'm saying, yeah, it is just a theory, but in reality, there's only actually just one you. That, yeah, you could have split one way or the other, but you went this way, and if you need to change, then you go back and say, oh, instead of my coming up this way, I came up the other way to get to me now.
And
it's.
So Shiva here on the comments had asked for a visual or a whiteboard, and I agree with that in some capacity, because I'm like imagining roots and I'm imagining branches, and I'm like, tree trunk, and how many versions and where do they, that whole thing. What I hear you saying is that, and this is where that I'm bringing in that consciousness, because definitely
Right.
from a higher self perspective, like you had already said, you believe that there's one conscious, or one higher self, right? And I think Shiva maybe
Right.
have said one soul.
Yeah.
From the consciousness in a three-dimensional reality, there's also, it's like I don't recognize other versions of myself. I don't recognize other consciousnesses. So it's like I'm still only conscious of me. And what I think I hear you saying is that with every choice, with that we choose, we could be shifting a timeline, but it's still doing so with our current consciousness.
Yes.
Okay. Oh, I need a breath for that. This is like running a marathon in a fun way. It's like, whoa, exercising my brain. I love this concept in part because I like the idea of, I like pure potentiality, and there are so many different potentials for any given situation or choice, and it's really easy to focus on. And I like to say this, that we've been conditioned in Western worlds, especially, to consider the worst case scenario so we can prepare for it. But what I like to say about that is that then, in a way, we're kind of choosing that, even though we don't want it, and it's, I know there's the prepare for the worst, expect for the best, and, but that's still kind of challenging to do. But I like to say if we choose and focus on the best case scenario, then we're more likely to attract that. And I've practiced that in a way where it's like, I just believe the best case scenario is going to happen. Now, I say that pithily, like, oh, I just believe it. Well, getting to the point of full-fledged 100% belief is not easy for me, at least.
It's not easy for anybody.
Yeah, but I can do it. I can get there. And I think it's probably, for me, it's like, in a way, I'm psyching myself out. And I think that's actually the appropriate phrase to use, because it's me playing with it's like, this has happened, and I just haven't realized it yet. And I fully expect that this is the outcome that's going to happen. And if I am able to get to that point where I really do believe that that's what's going to happen, and this could be with challenging conversations that I'm freaking out about, or like if I have to give somebody bad news, it's really easy to go into the worry mode. Like, oh man, they're going to yell at me and all of that stuff. Or, what if I say the wrong thing? And, all of that. Instead, going to, I'm going to have this conversation. It's going to go smoothly, and we're going to end the conversation on a positive note, and we're going to, whatever, go our separate ways, or whatever I want it to be. And even with those things where if I think rationally or logically about it, I would assume that there's no way this is going to happen, I get myself to a place where it's like, no, this is the way it's happening. And it does. And it surprised me without having the expectation attached that it was going to go differently. But it's like at the end afterwards, I'm like, it really did go that way. That's awesome. Now, I've not really looked at it as changing timelines or shifting timelines, but I do think there's an element to that, because I've chosen the outcome that I want to have, and let me ask you that. Do you think that has to do with kind of skipping from one timeline to another into the future instead of in the past?
Well, since you haven't gotten there yet, you're not skipping timelines. You're choosing to follow that timeline.
Creating or
creating
highlighting
that. Yeah, it's one of those branches going out the top of the tree.
Yeah.
And you get there and you say, oh, well, if I go this way, it goes a lot easier. So in that conversation, so you go off that way.
Well, and that really helps me with that metaphor, because can you go back and you can go back and alter a route then to go back and rewrite a timeline?
Well, you don't so much rewrite a timeline as you go back and say, oh, I followed this route over here up. I'm going to shift to where I followed this route over here instead, which then affects who I am now.
Okay.
It's not so much that you're rewriting it as you are shifting which route.
All right. But then with the branches, it's choosing. So there's no shift.
Choosing.
It's just choosing.
It's
okay.
Because you haven't been there yet. And then once you've chosen, you have a new trunk and a new set of routes that you could have come from. So if you go back after the fact of having that conversation and say, no, I wanted it to be this way, you're then shifting what route you came through.
Okay.
You got it?
Well, I do, except now the trunk is confusing me. So the trunk represents our higher self?
No.
Or our three-dimensional, our person?
Your person.
Okay, thank you. Because somewhere I decided that was higher self, and I'm like, wait a minute, you just said, okay.
no, that's us in the 3D.
Okay. All right.
And it keeps shifting, because as you go along, you have more timeline possibilities come behind and different branches to go out to as you move forward.
Yeah. Well, I'm just imagining a visual where you can actually do that. I mean, where you have it laid out and you're like, okay, these are the branches I want to choose, or these are the, the routes I want to shift. I'll just. Yeah. Do you think it's actually something that would, that then makes it more linear, and maybe that isn't congruent?
Yeah, and when you're choosing, going forward timeline, so to speak, it's like you work on manifesting things. And so you might be, I've heard of people, start to envision living in this beautiful house. And they start thinking more and more about it. It's going to have so many rooms. The rooms are going to be like this. I'm going to have this kind of view. And 20 years later, they all of a sudden realize that they're in that house.
Yeah. I know who that there's somebody specifically that has talked about this.
Yeah.
Oh, John Asseroff?
I don't remember that name, but it's probably several people have. But, so... Now, you didn't make conscious decisions on every single, for which branch to go to do that. But your higher self is helping you choose, because you're saying, this is where I want to be.
Yeah.
Help me get there. Even though it's not it may not be a conscious help me get there, but by putting that vision out there, that's what you're doing.
Do you think then that that if we consider, the way I've looked at it sometimes is, what does a person who has achieved what I want to achieve, whatever that happens to be, how do they live their life? There's something that I'm not doing right now, maybe, that they are. And so I try to embody that persona, not in a way like I want to be like them, but I want to break away the barriers, let's say. I want to feel what it's like to already have those things or experiences without having to do it in a three-dimensional way, which is one of the things that I think parallel timelines can help us with in terms of manifesting. Do you know what I'm asking? Because I don't think that even sounded like a question yet.
Well, you're wondering what, basically you're asking, what are they doing to be able to manifest that on an ongoing basis in the 3D versus what you're doing.
Except
possibly.
that I don't necessarily want it to be thinking about it as much as feeling it and embodying that sensation of already having having manifested whatever it is that I'm trying to manifest.
Yeah,
so
and
if it's a house, what does it feel like to live in that house?
Yeah,
You know,
and actually, I go to a crystal class once a month, and the instructor there does not allow us to use the word think.
Ooh,
Only
awesome.
feel.
Okay.
Well, because think, you're using your ego.
Yeah.
If
Well,
you're
and
feeling,
thinking is.
and if you're feeling, you're working with spirit.
Okay, so think, ego, feeling, spirit. I think that's interesting. I'm thinking more and more about that feeling aspect and how many of us have been taught, to disregard the feelings in favor of thought. And now it seems like we're heading back more into a harmony between the two.
Yeah, because you do need the balance between them.
Yeah.
And so like you're saying, you need to start, feeling what's it going to be like to live in that house. What's it going to feel like to do this or feel to do that?
Which is where those vision boards can help, right?
Yeah.
To put it from vision to feeling.
Yeah. Feel gratitude for what you have.
Yeah.
By feeling gratitude for what you have now, that brings in more.
Yeah. Well, now here we're going into another topic too,
Yeah,
because
okay.
gratitude is one I definitely want to focus on. I think there's a lot around gratitude that I just posted something yesterday that one of our members of this group had posted in her group around gratitude, and there are research studies and things like that that are showing the positive effects of gratitude. And I'm really happy about that, because I've often thought that studies that involve more ethereal topics are difficult to measure by three-dimensional standards, which is why they don't get those kind of results.
Yeah.
So now they're looking at outcomes in a three-dimensional way, which is helpful, I think, to validate. Not that I've needed validation for gratitude, but it's, so can you tie together gratitude and how it would apply to parallel timelines? You don't have to. I'm just wondering, because we're here and we started there, and it's like, how do the two blend together if they do?
Well, they blend together in terms of having the gratitude helps you when it comes to that point of choosing between one branch or the other going forward. You tend to follow that branch that produces that gratitude.
So a gratitude branch, or a gratitude.
Or you get there, and because you have that gratitude, your higher self helps direct you to that branch. Even though it might be 10 branches down that particular branch before you get there.
Ooh, so helps you along that. So like a branch with all kinds of twigs and things sticking out, that might be the one that we're directed towards in order to feel more gratitude, because that is what we're ultimately asking for, seeking.
Yeah.
Right. That's pretty neat.
Yeah, because there's a concept that the universe will provide what you. How does it go? I think it's like but what your thoughts.
Thoughts become things.
Things the universe will put in front of you what you think of, something like that.
Well, there's one I've heard that the most simplest version of that is thoughts become things, but it doesn't involve the universe, but ultimately it does.
Yeah.
It's the stuff we don't see that then creates. I've said this, that we're all master manifestors. It's just that we're not manifesting what we truly desire because of many aspects of conditioning and mindset and things like that have taught us to aim low, settle for things that we've been told is what our limit is. And when we allow ourselves to really feel into our true desires, our truth, our ability to manifest differently starts to show up.
Yeah.
Just saying. Well, so
are we far enough off topic?
Well, what I'm thinking about is, okay, so what I have said as a vision for this particular program is to go, what are parallel timelines? And I think we've established that those are well, I don't even know the best definition, but a wide variety of different paths that may be in existence all at one time, with different versions of ourselves there, except that then, since then, you've talked about the prospect that it's really only ever one of us at any given time, but it can affect both the past and the present and the future, I mean.
Yeah.
Would you change that definition? Go for it if you would add to that. Clarify it.
I can't think of a way to clarify it right now. It's probably a hard concept for a lot of people to get their minds around.
Yeah. We're basically saying that here we are, but there are all kinds of reasons that we got here, all kinds of choices that we've made in the past that have brought us here, and those choices we've made in the past are often affected by a wide variety of things.
Yeah.
And that from affecting the past perspective, we can, it's almost like we can create different choices in the past that might result in a different outcome for the present.
Yeah.
And then looking forward, we can choose if we are intentional in our choices, but even when we're not thinking about those choices, but are asking for spiritual or universal or source guidance, that we can be led in a different direction than we might otherwise be if we aren't being intentional.
Yes, something like that. Yeah. I mean, you have to remember that the 3D is all smoke and mirrors.
Yeah. Yep. And I think that's a big piece of this.
Yeah.
I think when I think about pure potentiality, I don't see all of the different options. I just see a big, kind of like a cloud, right? And it's like the magic mirror in Snow White in a way. It's like, I think at some point it just kind of sits there and billows until it shows some kind of reality that the person wants to see. And that smoke and mirror part is it's an illusion based on, we're looking at parallel timelines from a 3-dimensional linear time foundation.
Yeah.
Certainly, if we were talking about this from a different context, well, I don't even know what that would be because it's hard to say. It's like, if we're Palladians or, it's like, well, time is an illusion. But I think that's important to think about the smoke and mirrors part, because that really helps disrupt the belief that things have to happen in a linear way. Yeah.
Which is another interesting thing that you might be interested in. When we think of having multiple lives, we always think, okay, we started out back here in the 200s, and then the next one was the 400s, and until we're in the one now. Well, no, that's not necessarily. After we get through with this lifetime, we might go back to one in the 1800s.
Well, see, this is where we maybe diverge a little bit in our belief systems, because to me, it's like we're living all of them at the same time.
Well, and that was kind of the next thing I was going to say. But it's not. Because what it is that you're living now, but you go back to the 1800s and you learn something there in that lifetime that you're actually making use of this lifetime, although you didn't hit that lifetime till after this one, right. Kind of. So, but it's basically you're kind of doing them all at the same time. Or also really other interesting thing. There was someone posted, I saw it a couple of times, about someone's dying, someone's died, and someone meets them, and they start talking about different things, and it turns out that everybody on Earth is that one person. It keeps going back. He dies, gets put back into another person in another time. And when he dies there, he gets put into another one, to where essentially everybody on Earth is the one person experiencing everything.
Well, from a Christianity standpoint, well, and maybe beyond Christianity, isn't there a concept of we are all God?
Yeah.
And which puts that in a different context. Wow. Ooh,
so what does time mean at that point?
Yeah. So let's bring it down into, I don't even know if I want to say down, but because that is more linear again in a way.
Yeah.
But what are some practical applications you can think of with regards to parallel timelines? And I'm going to add in there parallel realities, because I think the things that I have in mind, I think, are more based on parallel realities, and I would say those could be synonymous with parallel timelines, but there's probably some differences too.
Well, I guess one of the big things, I guess, is, well, one that we've already talked about, and that's that, being able to go back and shift what happened in a past timeline, or shifting the timeline there to affect who you are now, to remove some blockages or some issues that you have now.
Right.
And then, of course, and then going in the other direction is just being able to decide which branches or which timeline going forward you're gonna follow.
And so,
Did that answer your question?
yes.
Okay.
I was going to just add to the one going back. One of the things that I have found really helpful in this is when we go back and let's say we look at a traumatic experience, some experience where we feel victimized in some way. One of the most, I shouldn't say the most, because I haven't tried all of these different approaches, but an effective approach can be to go back and look at that, let's say, child, and what is one empowering aspect that you can think of, that can come to mind around that situation. There are a lot of things that may have felt like they happened to you as an individual, but what is some inner strength that emerged from that? And really focusing on that can help shift the beliefs around that whole experience, and especially the beliefs around ourselves. So, like if I felt like I was, yeah, go ahead. Do you have an example?
Well, I don't have an example per se, but quite often in those cases, your younger self felt like they weren't heard, that they were completely victimized, that no one cared. And so the biggest thing you do is go back and give that younger self love. Tell them that they're loved, that they're worthy.
You can
all the
hug
other
them.
things. Hug them, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, all those things, just so that they don't feel as hurt by it.
Yep. As somebody I had spoken with, I think it might have been in one of my mashups, and I don't right now remember who it was, had talked about almost like reconnecting with that child, because that child in some way may have become fragmented from the whole.
Yeah.
And so they're in a place like a kind of like a safe space waiting. And this person goes back regularly to visit that child in a safe place where they can play and feel whole and loved and all of those things like you would imagine.
Yeah.
But they actually created almost like their own safe haven for that child. For me, I really try to bring that fragmented self back into me as a whole, by doing the things that you had talked about, but also by recognizing that's where the empowerment piece comes in for me, is that definitely from a child's mind, you can, you see good and bad and not a lot of the gray. And so I go in and think about what's, I had a lot of resilience, and I developed, I believe that's where my empath skills came from. where those gifts emerged out of these types of experiences.
Yeah.
And when I look at those empowering pieces, when I really embody those, I can feel an inner shift that is like, those experiences were necessary for me to become who I am today. Now, that is not to say that they were good experiences or they were that anybody's off the hook. But
Yeah.
that's a whole other topic too on forgiveness. But
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
anything we can do to create that shift, I think, is valuable. And so rewriting, or not rewrite, well, I have actually gone back and rewritten where it's like, this is what happened and I came out this way. But that coming back or going back and really visiting that person in the past who was traumatized in some way and sharing that love and our wisdom of today that we didn't have as kids can really help heal that wound and create a different perspective in ourselves that then does create a shift.
Yeah.
And so that to me is one of the takeaways. And then the other piece about choosing the branches, I am very focused these days on intention. Personally, I have found being intentional a challenge, and I'm embracing intention in a very different way than I once did. But being intentional and following, listening, that's where the presence comes from. Listening to our inner voice, to our higher selves, to spiritual guidance, and learning to discern the difference between that and our egoic voice can really help in that guidance that we decide to follow, that we choose to follow. Because we can follow ego, and if it's different than the higher self voice or spirit's voice, then we can feel, actually this is just coming to me now, because it's like, I never thought of that inner conflict. I've thought of it between ego and almost ego and heart and soul, but not so much between those two voices, and recognizing the conflict that can exist when there's a yearning to do one thing, but the ego's like, no, you're going to fail, or no, that's a bad idea. And knowing which one is real. I mean, which one is the divine guidance?
Yeah. Yeah. Excuse me. Yeah, because ego, well, we're changing topics again, but ego is
kind of going around.
is trying to save you, protect you, I should say. And it's looking at all the past experiences, goes, well, if you do something like that, that may not turn out good. So I want you to do this because this right now is safe. Whereas spirit is going, no, we want you to go here to grow. You're going to be safe this time. Yeah, in the past, maybe not so, but this time we're here, you're working with us. You'll be safe if you go this way. The only problem is that the ego has been in charge for so long that voice is a little bit louder quite often. And
I think it's easy to want to hassle ego, because it's like, man, I feel messed up because of the ego. The ego, and in a lot of ways it's been made out to be the bad guy or bad woman, whatever, no gender there. But to me, it works so much better to recognize. I wrote for like a 50,000 novel challenge thing. It's nothing I would ever publish, but it was from the perspective of my shadow, which ultimately I think in many ways turned into my ego. And all of every single example that was brought forth was kind of misguided protection. So like you said, it's trying to protect us. It just shows up in ways that can be counterproductive when ego and higher self or soul, I'm kind of using different terms to describe what I think may be the same thing, but when those things are in conflict. And so when they're in harmony, then I wonder, because I haven't yet experienced this completely, but if ego and soul and higher self are in harmony, then the ego's working with you, and it isn't the driving force. It's more of like the I don't know if I want to say the navigator, but he's a part of the team, he or it. keep saying he. Sorry about
Yeah.
that. I don't know why I do. Maybe my ego has male energy. I'm fairly certain it does. So that's what it is. I should just name it. But and so to me, that all of these things I think do relate to parallel timelines and parallel realities, because when we are choosing those branches, we have to, what guidance are we actually listening to? And in order to really allow ourselves to branch out, in the direction we want, we want to be listening to, certainly a goal would be that harmony between ego and higher self. But if we're not quite there yet, then that's actually one of the things that can be guided, that we can get guidance for in terms of what branch to pursue to achieve that, or to experience that harmony.
Yeah.
So, awesome. Well, I'm feeling like this might be a good breaking point. What I'd like to do is just take a look at a couple of the comments, and then we can conclude for today.
Okay.
Just because I'm in the mood to thank you right now, I'm gonna we're gonna go and look at some comments. But I love this conversation, Mark, and I really appreciate your coming on to talk about this. Mark and I have talked via Messenger this morning about another topic that we will likely bring forward, the earth chakras. But I plan to have repeat guests, so so you can expect to see Mark again. But also, for those of you watching, if you know of other people you think I should talk to, or if you would like to come on and talk about a particular topic, then send me a note and let me know, because I'm scheduling a lot of people. It's fun. I'm just I'm motivated. So thank you. And let me just take a quick look at comments.
I don't have the comments showing up on my feed here, so.
Hey, that's I encourage that, because it can be distracting when we're looking at each other to have comments pop up. That's why I typically don't respond to comments during the conversation, because I'm disruptive enough to a conversation. Add in another few people, and it's like, whoa. One said, "You are a handsome guy." I wonder who that might have been. Hi, Marianne, if you're still there. Yes, Shiva, I do watch. I'm a Trekkie. I'm an old school Trekkie. But I do not have the costumes. I do not go to conferences or things like that. I just, I just admire the shows and the movies. Shiva said, "One soul that is not limited to a specific time and space." And I like that comment. I think that the time and space part is what is presence, right? Do you see it that way?
Well, it's time and space is the smoke and mirrors. It's what we've put in. It's things that we've defined within the 3D world.
Yeah.
In order to make sense of things here.
Yep. Yeah. Which then, I just keep seeing the pure potentiality and the past. How the future and the past are energy. I sometimes say figments of our imagination, because the past is what we remember, but it isn't tangible, real this minute, and neither is the future. Yeah. But we can make it feel real, even though we're really only living right now.
Yeah, and it's surprising how many things that we think we remember didn't happen the way we think they did.
And that is why we can make those shifts in the past, because we have one memory of the past, and it's a memory. It isn't physical, something that exists today. It's not like we have to, sand or blast a hole in the ground in order to build a new foundation or something. We can just shift our memory. And, there's different, I go back and forth with that. There's some aspects where it's like, well, I can just remember something different. But there are some risks to that.
Yeah.
What is that one who does not? I don't know. I don't know if I want to get into this one. What's that one? It's Winston Churchill, I think, who said it. Like, one who does not study history is destined to repeat it, or something to that effect.
Yeah.
I think it's I think there can be learning from the past, but I think that when we hang on certain experiences to the point where they are affecting us, especially negatively today, those are the ones that we can sand down. We can create shifts in that.
Yeah, it's kind of along the lines of the phrase of, forgive but don't forget.
Yeah, yeah. And just like I always say, agreement and acceptance are two different things. It's like I can agree that this happened, but that doesn't mean I accept it.
Yeah.
Or no, it's more like I can accept that this happened. I don't agree with it. There we go. Hello. See, I rewrote that. Okay. Let's see. Now, Leslie, I keep calling you Nikki because I think that's what I have called you before. So you can let me know which one it is. But she said she had a direct communication with a human spirit guide that knew, that she knew. And he told her he was a time-like jumper. There are some really interesting movies about that too, where people are time jumping and things. I'm fascinated by those because I do believe we can do it. Although then how do you do that in a conscious, it's like I think I do it, but I don't do it in a conscious state. Where I'm me consciously jumping timelines. Like in the movies, they typically are still themselves. But that's a whole other, we cannot go into that now. Food for thought for the future. Let's see, Jeremy said he agrees with us from one perspective. We don't necessarily need to incarnate in the future next time, but zoom out far enough and all are simultaneous. Jeremy, you just word things so wonderfully. He also likes the idea that all physical reality is actually one source particle in a state of infinite superposition. Okay. Jeremy, you should join us next time. We'll have a roundtable kind of thing. This is cool. Shiva feels our absolute treatment of time is a human construct. Time is a thought construct, dimension, or lens that helps create a linear understanding of where we are on our journey. And I can quote him on that, so that's good. Wow. This is a cool conversation that's happened here. Shiva also said the higher voice, big picture versus the ego voice or fear-based, short-sighted. First awareness, then discernment. We all need to work on that if we ask him. And I would say that I talked on Monday about intention and attention, and that sometimes it seems really easy to give attention to something and then give our intention. And that I think it's for me at least, a more mindful practice to be intentional and then give attention. So it kind of, to me, relates to what Shiva just said. Never too late to start. Thanks again, Mark, and thanks to all of you who joined in today. And thanks for engaging with this conversation, too. I'm so happy you're here, and I am really excited to do more Hocus Focuses with other guests, but also with Mark. Thanks again, everybody, and I wish you a magical, mystical day and week. Woohoo! Bye.
Bye.